So in promoting harmony, it was based on the ideas of what make a successful middle school, and what schools must accomplish to get to that level of success that they're looking for. To be successful, promoting harmony mentions things such as relationships and how they should be built within students, between students and teachers, teachers and other teachers, and then teachers and family as well. Um, Next, a wide range of development was covered. Things such as social, emotional, physical, sexual, moral, and personal development are all discussed within the chapters. Promoting harmony goes into detail regarding each of those situations. Young adolescents may struggle within each of these subjects. So dealing with those issues that span from puberty to social interaction, just those changes that accompany different development during this time period and how to deal with those things. And then finally, it wraps things up by talking about ways to promote harmony and learning in your classroom. This includes things such as creating a relationship with your students, having meaningful dialogue with those students, and then creating an environment that is safe and that promotes learning. All of these elements come together to create a school environment that effectively encourages learning, promotes good learning habits, builds character, and establishes an all inclusive, respectful environment. So, some ways that promoting harmony reinforced what I learned from This We Believe that we read in the first 2 weeks. Um, I thought I'd done a great job of reinforcing those things. The ideas about changes that occur during the adolescent years were highlighted in both texts. Um, Both texts highlighted the changes that adolescents go through and how educators can play into those changes and use those things to create a better, more thorough learning environment. An emphasis on collaboration was also present in both texts. Using collaboration to create a student centered staff and environment was played up as an important factor in an effective school. So, this means that, such as eliminating negative factors and then encouraging the positive and uplifting dialogue that encourages learning, was good and present in both texts. Also, it was both texts were built on the idea that this is a very fragile time for adolescents and that it's crucial that we as educators scaffold during this time and establish learning habits that set students up for success. In this, it's important that we realize that there are all sorts of changes that are occurring. Like I had mentioned, the physical, cognitive, social, sexual, and emotional changes. And both texts really played into how we can use those changes to help them learn. So recognizing that change and then properly handling it to encourage good learning habits. So, what new information was learned? As far as new information that I acquired, I thought that I have gained a better understanding of what is required for a successful middle school. It really puts into perspective how many moving parts really go into it, into producing an effective learning environment. And then, more specifically, an important piece of information that I had gained from reading Promoting Harmony is the practice of setting goals. So, having students set personal goals to help like move and build on that educational momentum. I really didn't do this as well as I probably should have. So I think that having each student set a goal and seeing how they approach that goal throughout the school year, what practices can they do to get closer to that goal. Also, the text had mentioned creating a routine is a fantastic practice to allow students to become familiar with more content-related practices. Um, I thought that was really helpful. The book had used an example of Nancy and Terry had found themselves setting goals and writing simply because of that routine that was built into their class time. I didn't know that a routine could be so advantageous until now. So something that I learned was to incorporate a strict, hard routine that gives students the ability to learn instead of doing one activity one day and then not doing it for a few weeks, creating that routine so that they get in the habit of these good practices. And then an overall opinion of Promoting Harmony. Overall, I thought this was a fantastic read. I have a very positive opinion of the book. It's done a wonderful job encapsulating what young adolescents experience during this time. And I really enjoyed how the book laid out the information and then expanded on those ideas by presenting examples of what one could actually hear in the classroom. It had the excerpts of like conversation, which I thought was very beneficial. It's one thing to read about the changes that are occurring at this time, and then it's a completely different thing to experience these things firsthand. So these examples that those excerpts of conversation that the book included gave a realistic look at those changes in action. One statement in particular that moved me was, "Harmony in the classroom occurs when teachers create innumerable connections with young people." This quote really spoke to me because the relationships that I make with students are very important to me. I feel like that's one of the most rewarding parts of being a teacher, is to see that there are students that you help not only in the classroom but also as a person. Um, so I want to be more than just a teacher to my students. I want to be a mentor. I want to be an advisor. And I think creating those relationships does build harmony. So that excerpt really spoke to me when I read it. This idea was perfectly described later on in the text when it said they engage in informal conversation. They learn about students as individuals, and then they come to understand that and use that to build their academic strength. I think that was the most moving thing that I had read from the text. But in conclusion, I'm very highly favorable of Promoting Harmony, and I would definitely encourage middle school educators to read and consider the things that it talked about while establishing a culture in their classroom. I think reading this in accordance to this, we believe, was very helpful. It gives a completely different insight of what the classroom should look like, what the environment around the classroom should look like, and what really being an educator means. So I will definitely be using ideas and practices that I've learned from Promoting Harmony in my classroom in an effort to become a more effective, a more motivational, a more encouraging, and all-inclusive teacher.